Welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast. I'm your host, Christina Smith, and each week I'll be bringing together my favorite experts, coaches, clients, and friends to discuss how we navigate midlife and all of the transitions within it. So whether you're in the mood for a lighthearted conversation about menopause, seeking inspiration to find your next passion or purpose, or just want to create deeper connection with yourself or others, this is the place to be. Share these conversations with your friends. And if you're navigating midlife solo, come connect with us, join us, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And we will show you how the second half can be even better than the first half. On to this week's circle. Well, welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast. I'm your host, Christina, and I am here with two amazing, beautiful women, Paige and Casey. And today we're going to talk about self-care and what that looks like in midlife, and probably the hardest part, which is saying yes to ourselves and allowing ourselves to do those things for ourselves and not watching them slide off the list because something else more important came up. Just so we can get the conversation started, let's have our guests introduce themselves. So Casey, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so my name is Casey Kang Head. I am a 3-time cancer survivor and stroke survivor. I am a trauma-informed cancer coach using somatic movement and breathwork with survivors so they heal and are able to reclaim their life and learn how to live healthier to ensure they are stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally and don't live a life in fear.
Beautiful. I'm sure there's a lot of self-care in that as well. So I can't wait to talk to you about that. How about you, Paige?
Hello, my name is Paige Rossiter, and I am a facilitator, a coach, a mentor, and a retreat leader. And I am so happy to be here because these subjects are near and dear to my heart. There are things I've worked through and walked through, and I really love supporting women and figuring out what's most important, what brings them fulfillment, and how they can say yes to themselves, their self-care, and really to thrive in their lives.
Thanks. So self-care looks like a lot of different things. And I know during this season, we've talked some about it. And it's different for every woman. Like, I know a lot of people think that like mani and pedis and massages are like the self-care, and those are self-care. Like, don't get me wrong. And I also know that there's often deeper self-care. Like, I've just started taking supplements because of perimenopause. And so, doing that in the past would have been like, now I got this list of things I got to do, and I got to check off the list of all the things that I got to do. And my attitude has really changed about that, where I see it as kind of like a gift. And it wasn't always that way. Self-care was really hard for me because, well, especially before middle age, I was, raising a kid, working full time, had a husband, had responsibilities. And so it seemed like I should just be able to keep going and going and going. And so I'm wondering, what struggles have y'all had with doing self-care? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're like my husband, who he's a bandwagon jumper. Like, you tell him that, standing on his head for 5 seconds every day is healthy for him, he will do it tomorrow and for every day following. It's like not a problem for him whatsoever. But for me, it's always been a challenge, and I'm wondering what challenges y'all might have.
So for me personally, it's evolved for sure. I think prior to my experience with cancer, it was definitely just exercise. Like, that's enough. That's all the self-care you get. And since then, it's so much more. It's physical, mental, and emotional well-being as well. And it's evolved into not just exercise, but a regulated nervous system, lowering stress, taking time for myself, because it's really, truly about caring for oneself. And if we're not caring for ourselves, we're putting our own physical, mental, and emotional health at risk. And it's a hard lesson that I learned, but it's now what is so vital for so many women to actually understand as well.
Forced self-care. I love that illness can often, put on forced self-care. And that's what happened for me too, is I had really bad gut problems. And so I realized I had to slow down. It wasn't what I was eating. It was just the fact that I put so much stress on my body. So yeah. How about you, Paige?
Yeah. I think I ditto along with Casey. Like, there's so many different aspects that self-care cover. And so for me, it's being really mindful. A lot of times it's listening to my body, because my
Mm.
body has the information on, my answers, or is it time to rest, or is it time to push through? And really checking in with myself and my inner wisdom that has those answers for me around what is self-care. And I think it has changed, over the years. And sometimes now it's like you said, Christina, it's not necessarily like the massage. It's, what does quiet time look like for me? How do I replenish myself? Um, I love asking that of coaching clients, like, really, what is replenishment for you? And it's different for everyone. For some people, it's, being with others. For some people, it's being alone. It might be doing art. I mean, I think as women get in touch with that, then they can weave it into their lives more easily. So just even asking that question, what is self-care? What does replenishment look like? I think it's huge.
I love that, to check in with your body, because that is something I definitely didn't do before I was ill. Because I just, my body, it should just do what I want it to do, right? Like a machine, it should just do the thing. And so I never really looked at it. And of course, as we age, there's a lot of different things that I'm looking at. Like strength training for me is self-care, because I'm losing muscle mass pretty quickly and I don't want to do that. I want to stay healthy as long as possible, which is definitely not something I had to do in my younger days, because I worked in a lot of restaurants when I was in my 20s. So I never had to do that because I spent so much time moving all day long. And now that I'm sitting in a chair, it looks different. But really checking in with our bodies, I think for me, that was really challenging, because there were so many things I didn't like about my body. And so to check in with my body was like to check in with an enemy almost, like, and I just thought I could like go through all of that stuff right in my head, like I got the logistics, I can understand this, I can just keep moving forward. But a lot of our wisdom is in our bodies.
I agree with you. And I think what's really interesting is I've also had a challenging time loving my body. That's has been a lifelong, like since third grade when I started putting on weight. And so I think the thing, and especially now in midlife, you're saying like our bodies are changing, and yet they do have information. So looking at them as a resource, and being gentle and kind to the changing body. What's changing? Gray hairs, sagging things, all the things that are changing, the perimenopause, the sweats that happen, and all of that. So it's like, I think it's actually two things. It's like listening to our bodies and then also loving them as much as we can, like as much as it's possible to say, nobody else is going to take care of this machine that I live in. This is all up to me. Like, that's the good news and the bad news. Like, really, because if I look at it as the good news, then I get to make decisions for myself, and I get to say, okay, I get to decide what this relationship is going to be like. And that changes it for me a lot.
Right. It's a lifelong relationship that we get to have, and kind of like Paige, like, it's not that I didn't love my body before, but I didn't appreciate what it could do and the things that it can do. And now more than ever, it's like body first, mind second, because if there's there's a reason why when women have this like gut instinct that we oftentimes ignore. And so checking in with our body and our mind at the same time, it really kind of changes the conversation. And it's knowing that this vessel that we are in is the only vessel that we get, right? And if we are not taking care of it in some form or fashion, like anything else, it's going to start to break down and
Mm.
start to dysfunction. And I'm 6 years in postmenopause, so I've had to learn how to do things very differently. I'm 41 now, 6 years postmenopause. Like, the learning curve is steep, but once you understand like how to support your body in that way, it's so much more than just white knuckling through life
I
again.
love that. Yeah, because so often I always felt like the changing habits is like white knuckling it, but it's like now that I accept it as I get to take care of my body this way. Aren't I blessed to like have a body that's still functioning at 47 years old and still doing all the things that I wanted to do? Well, most of the things that I wanted to do, I'm working on some of those other things still. But for the most part, like I've been pretty lucky with how healthy my body has been. And I really want to keep that rather than like in the past, I'd have been like, oh, well, if a problem comes up, I'll go to the doctor. They give me a pill. I feel better. Right. And instead, there was so many things that happened to me in my 20s and 30s that in my 30s, I had to go, hold on. Maybe there's a different way to live where I don't need all these pills, because that was crazy for me, because it was really just putting bandages on the fact that like I was probably mentally, emotionally unhealthy. And so instead, I'm like, oh, I have inflammation, take an inflammation pill. Oh, I have a migraine, take a migraine pill. And instead, when I actually went to health coaching school because I was like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with me that the doctors aren't seeing. And when I changed the way that I ate, it helped. But when I started looking at the amount of stress that was in my life and the pressures that I was putting on myself, and started saying no to things a little bit more and yes to myself a little bit more, that's when I noticed a huge change where I stopped getting depressed as much and I stopped having the gut issues as much. I haven't been like, there's still no there's 10 diagnoses and no diagnoses all at the same time. As if you've ever been in the medical
Yeah.
jargon, they go back and forth, but they've done nothing. And it's really just how I live my life that has changed the way that my body shows up now and how I listen to my body. It always reminds me of this story of there's like a businessman, and he, every time he went to go do business with a new person, he would have dinner with them. And if his food settled okay, he would continue to do business with them. But if his stomach felt ill after he ate, that was him listening to his body and going, nope, this person is not for me to work with. And I always thought, like, well, that's a weird thing. And when we start listening to our bodies, or at least when I started listening to my body, that's exactly how it shows up. But so many of us, I feel like, avoid our bodies because that's where our feelings are. And we're told not to like pay attention to those feelings. Like my mom was like, oh, you're not sad, you're not angry. And so I stopped listening to my body, thinking that it was lying to me. Basically, I was like, my body doesn't know anything. And yet, it's like one of the best indicators of my health is when I check in with myself and go, actually, how am I feeling?
I definitely agree with you. I think that's a great point, that self-care is allowing ourselves to feel all the feels, not just the ones you deem as good or right, and allowing ourselves the tears and the anger and the sadness, and allowing it to move through us rather than keeping it stuck inside. And so I love that part of body and self-care and feeling all the feels, even when it's like, this sucks, okay, this sucks. And if I move through it, my body will help me move through it. I'll move through it. And then there's a place to move into. So that's definitely been part of my self-care, is allowing my feelings, even when they're not so pretty.
I would agree, because what we don't express, we repress, and repression leads to disease of the body. They're linking now more than ever because of all the research that has been done over the ACE study, which is the American Childhood Adversity study that's been ongoing for over 30 plus years, that certain tendencies that people have, like people pleasing and all of these other things, are actually creating disease of the body. And, sadly, chronic illness and cancer would be in that category as well. And so if we don't express it in some form, we're holding onto it. And that's just more stress on our bodies that doesn't need to be carried. But I grew up with, like Christina, like you don't feel that way. That's not okay. Like, be tough. Like, okay. So
And there's a both and, like, we can be tough and still be like, and this sucks. And cry through it, right? We can cry right through doing the hard thing if that's what we need to do. Or we can say with ourselves, maybe this isn't the right time for me to do this. Maybe there's a different way. Maybe I just need to give myself a break today, which I think is like, that's something I definitely was not given. I was not given like emotional health days when I was in school. My mom was like, nope, you're fine. You're going to school. I mean, many times we were sick and she was like, nope, you're going to school. But the 80s was a different time.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I don't think I stayed home from school unless I literally threw up.
Right.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about that? The very first coach I worked with, I remember, just like having this day, I was sick, and I was like, and her assignment, I mean, I guess I kept my coaching call, was literally to cancel everything and to shut the shades and to lay down. And it was like, what? Like, I get to do that. And it was such a huge aha for me. And I still remember it, you guys. This is for 25 years ago. Yeah, it's been a really long time. Like, what does that mean to take care of myself? Because nobody else is going to do that. Nobody else is going to tuck me into bed. And so, slowing down and saying, is this what I want to do? For me, often, like, I love the way I feel after a workout. So I want it here, but my body's like, okay, overextended. Like enough. And so for me, that is also like, is it my head that wants it, or does my body feel like this is a good thing to do for myself? And so noticing and checking in on that, I think is super important.
Love that so much, which leads us kind of into this idea of giving ourselves permission, because you were just saying that about like, oh, when somebody else tells me I can give myself permission, then maybe it's okay for me to give myself permission. Like, I had a boss once that was like, Christina, you're not feeling well. Go home, go rest. And it was like, that's okay. Like, aren't I supposed to work like 60, 70 hours a week? And when I started working for myself, I realized, oh, I'm the one who put those expectations on myself. It was never really my boss. And when I realized that, I realized I had to be the one who gave myself permission to say, no, you can rest. You can take the afternoon off. You don't have to work 60 hours a week. It doesn't necessarily even benefit my business. In fact, I learned that the less hours I work, the better I do, because I'm at least giving it like energy that I want to give it, instead of that forced energy that's like, oh, let's just check this off the list, just like self-care. So for me to say yes to myself meant I had to give myself permission to slow down, which is really anti-80s phrasing. It's like, what do you mean? You could fit more stuff. You can be more productive and get more stuff done. But giving myself permission just to slow down was so challenging, and be like, oh, I mean, I can even feel it in my body at times where it was like, I don't want to slow down. I want to get this done. And my body is like, please just rest. So what is the big challenges with y'all with the self-care? Is it saying yes? Is it slowing down? Is it feeling okay doing something really sweet for yourself?
Yes, yes, and yes. Like right on, my mind's going in so many directions. I mean, for me, it's all of that. It's, it's slowing down. It's checking in with myself. It's saying, like, if something feels so hard that I'm trudging through mud, like, come back to it. Like today, like you said, today may not be the day. I think giving myself permission and really checking in with what I want has been a huge part of self-care, and just saying yes to the things in my life that are important to me, and not necessarily what other people want, or what they're angling to get, or and I also think that this idea of, if I say no to something, am I going to disappoint someone? I remember that, and often I'll work with a client and say, I want you to say no to every single offer that comes this week. And they're like, ugh. It's like, just to practice and to see what that feels like. And really to hold that place of, like, if I say no to something else, I'm saying yes to myself. Right. And is it important to say yes to yourself? And so knowing that and playing with that, and just, really realizing what happens in that yes to myself, whether that's time, like I said, time alone or time out in nature, whatever it is that's fulfilling. It's like that can make everything go more smoothly and be so much more enjoyable.
Right.
Yeah.
I would agree. Learning how to say no after working in corporate America 60 plus hours a week, like you, Christina, like I didn't know that I was even allowed to say no to work events. Like 2 days prior to being diagnosed, I was at a charity event. Like, I didn't even realize like that that was allowed. So giving myself permission to go no and really take back my time, take back my energy and resources to where it's necessary. Like yesterday, I just was exhausted in the afternoon and I was like, you know what, we're done. Because you just staring at the computer is not helpful. So we're gonna shut it and we're gonna walk away. And it is what it is today. And that in and of itself is still something that like my gut's like, are you sure this is okay? And I have to go, yes, it's okay. Like, because tomorrow's a new day.
It's almost like we have the opportunity to make permission slips
Yes.
for ourselves. Like I give myself permission and I hold myself valuable. Like I think sometimes it's beliefs that get in the way of being able to say yes to ourselves. Like what does your inner critic say? Or what belief do you have that, like for me, a big one was I have to be accomplishing to be worthy. Like
Yeah.
like you're saying, like that there's a to-do list. And then if that to-do list isn't done, it's, like I'm not worthy. So that was like, how do I get off this treadmill of like I'm just saying yes to everything and I'm burning out. So it's been a big relearning and looking at things and saying, is this a hell yes or is it not? Like, where do I get to distinguish yes and no, no, thank you.
Yeah, I love how you said that with earning your worth. That is definitely like in my life, it was like you do all the hard things, and until the hard things are done, and you sacrifice and you do all these other things, when those things are done, then you can go have fun. And it also goes along with this other belief of hard work equals success, which is why I used to have like the 60+ hour weeks, is because like I was like, oh, I have to work really hard, which meant that it was a lot of hours and I would do all the hard stuff first, and I would even make easy stuff hard because it didn't feel like an accomplishment unless it was really something challenging. And I loved, Paige, what you said about listening to yourself, because for a lot of people that are around me, going out on a Friday or Saturday night is like how they have a good time. They love to go out. And the first Friday night I hung out with my husband, before obviously we were married, he was like, oh, we're gonna go out to dinner with this person and that person and this person. And I was like, like I was a single mom. I was used to being home alone on a Friday night or with my child. So like going out, and it took me several years before I was like, it's okay that at the end of the week, I don't want to be with people, that I mean, and it still comes up for me because I'm surrounded by a bunch of extroverts where they like to do lots of things together and go and do the things. And I'm just like, I'll be in my room crocheting. And that's what really fills me up. But it was like really having to start listening to my body and going, no, my body really doesn't want that. And if I go out on a Friday night, I'm going to be too exhausted Saturday to do anything that I really want to do for myself, that I want to say yes to, like going for a hike or whatever. If I go to bed early on a Friday, I get to get up early and go for a hike on Saturday. And to me, that is so much more meaningful than, going out and having dinner in a place where you have to wait an hour to get in because there's a wait. I mean, I don't find fun in any of that, but some people do.
I think that's why I love this conversation, because we have, different things that fill us up, and I think even for the women who are listening, like I start to identify what does fill my cup, like what is it that feels like self-care? What are my yeses? Like you have all those answers. It's just starting to ask and notice, like, am I happy when I do this? Do I want more time alone? Do I want more creative time? And with all those answers, then you can start to build the life that does work for you rather than obligation or what society says is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and there's layers of it because I mean, I never before would have gone on vacation by myself, but I now go away because there's so many people around me. I go away on a weekend by myself, and like they're all like, "You went to the beaches alone?" Yeah, I did. It was awesome. Like it was awesome.
Right?
Funny. That's
Like
funny.
we keep making decisions based off of old programming because it's been ingrained in us for so long. And yet, if we really, like Paige said, check in with ourselves to realize what it is that we are want to say yes to, and then know that it's whatever we say yes to is worth it, and putting in boundaries and saying no to things, and that's acceptable and okay. It really does start to change how you feel about yourself.
Yeah. And holding yourself worthy and valuable of making choices and having those boundaries. And I'm just laughing, Christina, because my husband, who I really, really love dearly, is going away this weekend. And I'm like, yes, yes. And I've had people say to me, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to stay home.
Do nothing.
Enjoy every moment here with my animals and be in this space in a way that fills me up. And, it's like, yes, I could make all these social plans. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. I'm keeping it really simple. Like, I feel like this weekend is replenishing for my soul. And so I'm looking forward to it, really.
I feel, especially after the pandemic, when my husband went back to like staffing men's weekends, I was like, whew. Because we both work and live in the same place all day long. So it's like it became a lot. So I was so happy when he could go back to doing weekends. And what's silly is that like when I check in with myself sometimes on a weekend alone, cleaning the house is what I want to do. It sounds so ridiculous to the younger me because I'm like, why would you want to do that on your weekend off? But there's something about cleaning the whole house and having the whole thing clean. And I'm by myself and I could take a shower and I feel good because everything feels good around me. So even like cleaning the house becomes self-care to me in those kinds of spaces. And it may seem silly to other people who'd be like, you could do anything. I mean, there's also, when Taylor Swift came out with her new album, I became a Swiftie in the last year. My husband happened to be away and I like got my snacks and my notebook and I was like, yes, we're going to watch this because it's something my husband would not want to watch all day long. But to me, it was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what I wanted to do is sit here and just watch these videos. And it seems so silly, but really, I mean, whatever makes us feel good. And then what happens is like, for me, it's been like a snowball effect is like, when I take care of myself and then I get that little, ounce of joy out of it. Well, the next time I'm like, yeah, we want to do that. We want to like, what do I want to do now for myself? And that's how it's become bigger and bigger. So when we say like giving ourselves permission, I didn't start with giving myself permission to go away alone for an entire weekend. Like I started by saying, I'm going to take 15 minutes here and squeeze that in. So I guess as we're rounding up our tools, one of the tools I would say is, if you need to, start small. Another tool that I heard Paige say is like, just say no to everything, like cancel it down and see what happens. Like what's the worst that can happen? Something might need to be rescheduled, but it could be that, all that stuff that we think is so important actually isn't that important. What other tools are we going to mention or have we mentioned?
I think something that's really important is just, are you breathing? When we get stressed and we have anxiety, we stop breathing, and it's one of the most vital functions in our body. But when we don't breathe, we aren't making clear cognitive decisions that, could help us. So if we just take a deep breath and then go, is this something I want to do? Or do I even have the bandwidth to do this for myself? We really can get clear on even the answer that we're looking for.
I love that, Casey. I know for me, I'm blessed. There's actually a lot of things I want to say yes to in my life, and learning how to say no, even to things I want to do, which is like taking it a step further. Because if I say yes to leading all these women weekends and adding more retreats and taking on more clients and you know, what's the price that I pay for that? Because there's not time for me to slow down for myself, time for me to connect with my husband, time for me to be in my body and move. And it's like, so I always look at that too, like what's the bigger yes? What is the thing that I could continue to say yes to everything, even if I really want to do them? And sometimes the biggest challenge is saying, crap, I'm going to say no to this because it's just too freaking much. And that has been a game changer for me, because I used to say yes and travel all the time. And the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden afterwards, it was like, I don't want to be in the air that much. As much as I love doing women's weekends and being on the road, it was like, this is just too much. And so having that clarity of, you know, I want to do all these things. And if I was to rate them, that's a good tool, right? Like, this is the one that's the biggest. This is the thing that, you know, you're dancing around to Swifty. You're like, this is the thing that lights me up the most. So looking for that within yourself, like having that awareness of what is like the most exciting things, or, you know, and allowing it to be okay that even if, you know, it would be great to go to that party, and I know that that's too much social this weekend, so that's the thing I'm gonna not do.
And I think also just tying to that is like giving yourself permission to go to where, if you say yes to something and you go to it, giving yourself permission to go, yeah, I'm going to go home even after 5 minutes or whatever amount of time you decide, because you don't have to stay. Like, we always feel like, well, I'm here, I'm obligated to stay. It's like, there's no obligations. Say like, really tired, I just wanted to say hi and leave. Like,
I love
but we
that one.
often feel like this is like where I have to be now because I committed. The commitment is always to you first and prioritizing you. And that's the thing we forget.
I love that, Casey.
Yeah, and Paige knows me from some women's weekends, and I give myself permission not to stay and hug everybody at the end, because I am like, I swear, all day Sunday, I'm like, give me a hug now, because once the final meeting's over, I'm like, you're in my dust before any, like, Irish goodbye is me. That is me everywhere I go. Like, once I'm done, I'm done. And and before, it would have taken a lot more emotional energy and mental energy for me to go, okay, Christina, just stay here. We're going to hug everybody. And it would feel like it wasn't even sincere goodbyes then, because it was just like, okay, who else do I have to hug so I can get out of here, right? And now it's just like, let me tell you, I'm not going to stay. So give me a hug now, and I'm leaving. Like, when I want to leave, I am leaving. And I just let that be okay. And it's really odd when I go somewhere, like to a party, and there's like friends or something. They're like, shouldn't we say goodbye? And I'm like, I said hello. Like, saw them, I connected. Wait. They'll text me if they need something. I don't know. But like, it's like one of those small acts of self-care. But for me, it feels really good, because when I've hit my extrovert limit, I'm done. Like, that's all that's happening. And I allow that to be okay now, and hope that other people are going to understand. And if they don't, hey, come clear with me. Let's talk about it in the future. But it's not about anybody else but me and my energy and me saying yes to myself. Awesome. Well, I know that we could continue to have this conversation, but I want to just start closing up. So if we could give one piece of wisdom, and then feel free to tell people how they can reach out to you. My piece of wisdom, I wrote this down earlier, is I always tell my clients to make a choice and then decide it's right. So check in with your body, make a choice, and then rather than like being like, oh, should I, shouldn't I, should I not, just decide it's right. Whatever choice you made, decide it's right. Of course, just like Casey said, you can show up to the party and decide all of a sudden like, oh, this isn't right. Then make the decision to leave and decide that's right. Like, you can just make a decision, decide it's right, until you want to make a different decision. And that would be my little bit of wisdom for today. How about you, Casey?
There's a lot, but I think in tying to self-care, it's really about we can have the perfect diet, we can have the right exercise routine, but if we are not taking care of what's inside of our heads and our hearts, we are still unhealthy in some way. And that means addressing and taking care of our emotional mental health. And, you know, it, it's one of those things where I was just like, well, I'm physically doing the thing that I should be doing. Everything else is fine. And really nothing else is fine. And regulating your nervous system and creating a better life for yourself is the best thing that you can do for your physical, mental, and emotional health.
Thanks, Casey. How can people connect with you?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm at The Happier Hustle,
Okay.
and Facebook and all the things.
I like the Happier Hustle. That's a cool Instagram, because a hustle by itself always makes me like cringe a little bit ever since
Right.
I've like pulled back from those 60-hour weeks. But
Oh,
like hustling in a happy way, well, now that's a different thing, isn't it?
it is.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. Paige?
Oh yeah, I know we could go on for hours. I feel like there's so much here around what is a yes and how do we do self-care. And I think for me the piece of that I have to offer is really to get in touch with the wise part of yourself who knows, and to start to foster that relationship, because you really do have all the answers. And so some of you might be further along on that journey, or that might be a new concept, but to like really trust in, if you check in with your body and with your heart and with your mind, like the answers are there. So like continue to delve into knowing yourself and honoring yourself and what's true for you. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, that has been a huge thing, instead of me looking to the outside for all of that information. And over the decades, it's like, wow, the more I know, the more I can create what I want, which is fantastic.
I love that advice, because it always reminds me of that question that we give to like circles for Women Within Circles, in case you're looking for a woman's circle, womanwithin.org. I think we mention it in every episode because it's been so
Probably.
powerful for me to sit in circles with other women. But there's always this question when you say like, oh, well, what do you think about that? And they say, I don't know. And then you go, but if you did know, what would it be? And for some reason, we have answers to that question, even though it's the same question. Paige, how can people connect with you?
People can reach us at, I will say, my business partner and I are offering retreats for women to say hell yes to themselves. I mean, that is really so at the core of what I believe. And so you can say hell yes in that small way, like morning coffee on my porch swing is a small hell yes. And there's everything in between. And so we've created retreats for women to say hell yes in a really big way, to give themselves like time away to replenish and get really connected to themselves and listen in and make some big transformational changes. So you can reach us at Thrive with Margaret and Paige, and there's information there about retreats coming up. We have one in Mexico in April of next year, and then we'll have one in the mountains of Colorado in September. So if you're interested in giving yourself that kind of gift and saying a big hell yes, then definitely reach out, and happy to chat with you and make sure it's a good fit.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both for being here today. I appreciate it so much. Such a lovely conversation. We might have to have another one in the future. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for tuning in. It really means so much to all of us. If you're craving some real connections and you want to have these midlife conversations, join us for our next New Moon Circle. You just go to invitingshift.com/new moon and join our community. Share, support, be inspired by a group of fabulous women just like you, navigating midlife and growing connections with themselves and others. Want to support our show? The podcast world is so competitive, and your likes, subscribes, and reviews make a huge difference. Seriously, those small little clicks help us reach more amazing women. Be a hero and spread the word. I'll see you next week.